because we want to test the mettle of our friends. And I want to say, you, ladies and gentlemen, pass these tests with flying colors, so welcome. It's really my delight to welcome you this morning and to say how proud I am to be president of York College on behalf of our over 6,000 students, our 180 or so committed faculty, our many, many staff. I welcome you this morning to our York College Executive Leadership Breakfast. I want to tell you that just about 3 or 4 weeks ago, York College passed with flying colors 14 for 14. That means 14 standards assessed and 14 standards met, with commendations, with suggestions and recommendations of our Middle States accreditation. Thank you. And that is a test, ladies and gentlemen, that our whole college has to take once every 10 years. So we've passed the test for that 10-year accreditation, and now we're ready to take the institution to the next level of excellence. And you are a part of that, so I wanted to share that with you. It is really my pleasure to ask you to give a very, very warm welcome to our keynoter this morning, Mr. Elliot Lee Sander. He's right here, and you're going to hear much more about him from Dr. Flores, who will introduce him. But Mr. Sander, and as I was talking with him this morning, he told me that he grew up, in the neighborhood. And he'll, I'm sure, tell you more about that. And he has long-standing relationships with this part of Queens. And of course, he mentioned Greater Jamaica and Carlisle Towery, so he won me over immediately. And I don't even see Carlisle here to get my kudos, but I know his table is here. So you'll assure that that message gets back to Carlisle. But even during my tenure here, Mr. Sander, when he was with Jim Harris, was an early supporter of our Executive Breakfast series. And shortly after, he took the leadership of the M.T.A. And I know he'll tell you more, but I know that there are big things, big vision, $29.5 billion capital program, a very conscious state of good repair, the notion of the East Side link and the link of Jamaica to Grand Central and so on. And I know that as you hear him this morning, there will be many interesting vision items that you will listen to and then you will have a chance to engage with him on. York launched this leadership breakfast in 2005. It was inaugurated by Congressman Meeks and Larry Mandel, and Congressman sends his regrets. I spoke with one of his assistants yesterday and he had something else. But it was launched in the fall when we talked about, they came to talk about the state of disaster preparedness and the particular condition of Katrina. We've continued these breakfasts with speakers like Christine Quinn, with JetBlue founder David Nealman, City Comptroller William Thompson, former Deputy Mayor Dan Doctorow, and Con Ed CEO Kevin Burke. So we're really honored to have you join the distinguished cohort of civic leaders and business leaders who have addressed us. Before we move into the heart of the program, let me just acknowledge two realities of our life today. Our life at York, our life in the United States, our life internationally. One is more local, and one, of course, is international. Dr. Gloria Black, a leader of Southeast Queens, a woman who was a stalwart in this community, a woman at the forefront of so many critical causes in education, in civil rights, in business, in housing, died recently. She was a phenomenal leader. She was a fierce friend, a loyal friend of York's before my time and during my time. She was an advocate for us. She was a real supporter of these executive breakfasts, and we will miss her because I assure you, Mr. Sander, were she here, she would be the first one with a question. But I suspect that there will be others who will rise to the occasion. I know, for instance, that Adwa is taking over as the leader of Community Board 12. She's an alum. But I wanted to mention Dr. Black and then join another mention. Today, as you are all aware, marks the 40th anniversary of the tragic day. That is the day on which Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. It was because Dr. King lived and fought the kind of public fight that he waged in his short 39 years, when you think of it, 39 years, that so many of us are able to lead successful private and public lives today. His words, his actions, his deeds continue to inspire us and to remind us that we too have a responsibility to make a difference to others. Gloria Black achieved the longevity that Dr. King was denied. But today, we remember them both with an all too short moment of silence. Thank you. On Sunday, from 4 to 7, there is a major event commemorating Dr. King. I invite you, there are flyers on the table. Please take note, our distinguished Professor Ron Daniels will be leading that event. It's also a good opportunity for me to thank so many of you for the support you gave us on January 21st at our foundation event. And I see Claire has just arrived, and she was a key factor in that event. We held our first foundation scholarship. 3 more tenors engaged us. It was a marvelous event. We thank all of our supporters, all of our foundation leaders, our alumni, our faculty, our community, our corporate sponsors. Reverend Norris, I know, is in the room. Where are you, Reverend Norris? Here. You were the first to buy a ticket, Reverend Norris. That's right. And I thank you for that. It was a phenomenal success. We had some fun, and we raised some funds, and we'll continue to do that and keep you posted. There are exciting things happening at York College every day as we continue to build our institution into the place the founders envisioned some over 40 years ago, and we thank you for all your help. Before I introduce Dr. Treon Fleuris, who will do the introductions of our keynote speaker, Mr. Sander, I do want to just acknowledge a few people in the audience, and I will do some additional acknowledgments at the close. I see our American Airlines friend is here. Of course, you've already seen Justin Birnbach. Thank you for being here. Our good friend, our former bar president, Claire Schulman, is here. Thank you, Claire, thank you for all you do for us right from the very start. She's been a real stalwart on our foundation. She's opened up her Rolodex and introduced me to her friends. And you know that she has some of the best friends in town. I want to thank my foundation board for being here, members of my foundation board, Jackie Arrington and others. I want to particularly thank our alumni for being here. Adwa is in the room, and so is Eva Keith. She's right here. I want to welcome the students from the Bronx Aerospace. Yes, stand in your wonderful uniforms, please. And while we're in that territory, let me mention the Phillipses, who have been so generous to us in our aviation scholarships. And then, of course, I'm linking you to our Tuskegee Airmen. Would you please stand, Tuskegee Airmen? Thank you for being with us. Those are just some of the ones I want to acknowledge now. I will acknowledge some others at the end of the program. But now let me invite Dr. Treon Flores, an internationally known leader in the field of aviation, who joined our faculty in fall of '07 as the director of the CUNY Aviation Institute at York College. Already, Dr. Flores has developed a very ambitious strategic plan, is seeking funding for components of the plan, has launched a number of co-curricular efforts for students, and is inviting nationally recognized industry leaders to our campus. As you will see, this event this morning is co-sponsored by the Aviation Institute, and so it is my delight to introduce Treon to introduce our speaker. Treon Flores.
Thank you, President Keys. I really appreciate that. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
I'm Treon Flores, and I'm very, very proud to be the director of this marvelous aviation institute in this marvelous institution that we call York College, in this marvelous institution of higher learning. I would also like to extend to you a warm welcome to our executive leadership breakfast. It's a privilege to be here, a privilege to represent the Aviation Institute, and an honor to introduce our honored guest, Mr. Sander, the Executive Director of the Metropolitan Transit Authority. There is something in particular which is very impressive about the biography of Mr. Sander, and I would like to focus on that in beginning my introduction to him. He does have a biography full of rich professional and personal achievements, but Mr. Sander is a pilot. He has the dream of flight in his heart. He has Jet A fuel in his veins. Well, dear guests, so some of our aviation students and some of the high school students that are joining us today have Jet A fuel in their veins. And our job here as an aviation institute and aviation faculty is to make sure that we transform their dreams into realities, to give our students the wings they need in order to fly through the excellent education they receive, but also literally through our flight familiarization program that ensures that students get exposed to flight operations, even though they major in aviation management. Whether our aviation students want to pursue careers as pilots like Diraj Jumani or airport managers like Arlington Agebor, or manager line functions like Geeta Singh, own their own flight school, like I found out this morning, like Rachel Brigal, or be an air traffic controller like Amanda Haniff, we are here to help them. Here at York, the aviation faculty strive towards excellence in teaching and combine that goal with a strong research focus, staying at the forefront of the academy and at the forefront of the aviation industry. We have a first-class, multidisciplinary program. We have an innovative curriculum, which we are revising, and we will move to accredit as soon as we can. As soon as we have our first graduate is the first chance we get to accredit. And that will be a wonderful follow-up to our institutional accreditation. Like the president just mentioned, we were able to pass with flying colors. We are here for our students, first and foremost, and we are here to advance aviation education and to serve our industry as well as our community. Ladies and gentlemen, our students are the bright future of our industry. They were told so last fall by the CEO of Republic Airways when they joined the Wings Club luncheon as guests of Boeing Corporation and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. Mr. Sander, your impressive career is an inspiration to our students. It's an inspiration to all of us. It combines a balance of 30 years of industry experience, public service, as well as academic experience. And you know what? You don't even look older than 30. Mr. Sander currently oversees the largest transportation network and toll authority in North America. And I think, even though that is not in your biography, it's one of the largest in the world. The M.T.A. is comprised of 7 agencies: the New York City Transit, Long Island Railroad, Metro North Railroad, M.T.A. Bridges and Tunnels, M.T.A. Bus Company, M.T.A. Capital Construction, and Long Island Bus. Now, you probably know that I'm not from around here, that I had to actually recap these 7 agencies and actually read them literally through my notes. But to me, it's a learning experience in terms of what the M.T.A. is, how it's structured, and what it does. In addition to a prominent career with Jim Harris, which is a global transportation architectural and planning firm, Mr. Sander held executive positions in several New York State transportation agencies. He has also been a leader in the TRB, which is the Transportation Research Board, which we intend as an institution to work with, and as an institute to do a lot of research and other activities in collaboration with the industry, the government, and the other academic institutions that comprise the TRB. He's also been a founder and former director of the Rudin Center at some other university here in New York City. I don't remember the name. I think it's called NYU, but Mr. Sander was the person that put that together. So before I turn the floor over to Mr. Sander, I would like also to acknowledge, like the President did, the aviation management students that are here this morning, sitting at the table there far to my left, and you saw them all over the place, being integral parts in organizing this event. I'm very, very proud of you. We're all very, very proud of you. I would also like to recognize our aviation faculty, Professors Gandhi and Escamilla. I know Professor Gandhi is here. I haven't seen Professor Escamilla this morning, but I'm sorry, I don't mean to put him on the spot. But, and also our professor on loan, as I call him, Mr. Ray, Henry Ray. So Reeves and Henry, please stand. And of course, like the President mentioned, our Tuskegee Airmen, we're really proud to have you here in our midst. We really appreciate your time, and also the Bronx Aerospace Academy students. But last but not least, my board members, my Aviation Institute board members that are here today, thank you for your time. I really, really appreciate the effort. And Mr. Towery is sitting at a different table with his own college from the General Jamaica Development Corporation. But really, very, very big thanks for your service to the Aviation Institute at York College. Thank you all for your service, so that we all, working together, advance the mission of our beloved program and restore it to where it deserves to be, in a position of local, national, and why not, international prominence. That's part of the strategic plan, and I'm here to ensure, in partnership with everybody else, that we reach that point. We can do it if we all work together. I would also like to invite you to our inaugural aviation executive event, which will take place here next Thursday, actually in the Little Theater, featuring Dave Bushy. And also another event which will take place on April 15th that is organized by our aviation club that we just founded, that focuses on careers. It's a roundtable on careers in aviation. So April 10th and April 15th. And now that I have shamelessly performed my marketing duties as far as, hey, the Institute pays my salary, right? So now that I have shamelessly performed these marketing duties, it's a great pleasure to turn the floor over to Mr. Sander. Mr. Sander.
Well, it is a really extraordinary pleasure to be here this morning, and I'm not sure that words can convey it. First, to the students, it really is all about you, and great to see you here. And also, and I mean this from the heart, really honored to have the Tuskegee Airmen in terms of your public service, in terms of what you did, and in terms of what represented to our country, what has become in terms of what you did then and how our country has evolved. You represent the best of public service, and that's what a lot of us is about. It wasn't noted then, but thankfully it is noted now. And I look around the room and I just see people here who have been so inspirational to me, who've had such meaning to me, like Borough President Shulman and Carlisle Towery, Martha Taylor, who was with who I went to school with at PS 131 in Jamaica High School there, and Bill Fife, who I worked with at Dimjam Harris. It's just really very sweet to be here. To the students, just to give you a flavor of what can happen, because Triant was right, and President Keyes, you know, you can achieve what we have achieved. I grew up, I guess, 2 blocks, actually a block maybe north of the tracks being Hillside Avenue. My mom still lives on Wexford Terrace, and that's where I grew up. I, as a child, spent much time here, Macy's and Gertz and what have you. And then after going to PS 131, Ryan Junior High School, Jamaica High School, went to college, came back, went to work for the City of New York as a budget analyst at New York City OMB, and then after that, wanted to get into line management. I was really interested in supervising, getting into management, and went to the Bureau of Parking, which I oversaw. I was the deputy director and then was promoted to run it, and that's when I was introduced to Carlisle Towery, and remember discussions of Jamaica 4, and then getting a sense of Carlisle's vision for this area and the work of Borough President Shulman and others, but these two leadership, just being exposed to leadership of these two individuals and watching what transpired here. And then when I spent 4 years working in the Gertz building, running the Office of Rent Administration, most of my career was in transport, which is my first love, and yes, aviation is my first love. Most weekends I'm out flying my Mooney out of Republic Airport, but did a stint in housing, running the Office of Rent Administration here, and then had involvement in this community. And oh my God, our City Councilman, Mr. Weprin's here. I went to high school with David at Jamaica, and so we often use these facilities. This is not my first time in this room. We used facilities of York College for the Office of Rent Administration. And then after my government life, going to work for Dimjam Harris and AECOM on the corporate side, and then on the side at NYU, developed a partnership with Anthony Pearl, who was the first director of the Aviation Institute, and Buzz Paswell, Cruz Russell from the Port Authority, who was very much involved in setting up some, obviously, a number of people in this room know about Cruz and his involvement. So when I'm in this room, it's like my life. But to the students, just really shows you how, you can grow up on Wexford Terrace and go to Jamaica High School and go to York or and so forth, and achieve, whatever's out there for you. So, turning to the M.T.A., it is an extraordinary time for the M.T.A., and what I want to talk about briefly, tell you a little bit about what the M.T.A. is, tell you some facts that you may not know, talk about the challenges that the M.T.A. has ahead of it, and then the agenda that we are implementing to meet those challenges and save some time for questions and answers. So first, in terms of the M.T.A is an extraordinary institution, vital to the viability of the region in economic terms and environmental terms. We move about 8.5 million people a day, New York City Transit, on our bus system, commuter rail, obviously Jamaica being a very, very important component of it. We carry 2/3 of the country's rail riders, 1/3 of the country's public transportation commuters. So we are beyond the 800-pound gorilla in terms of public transport. We have an operating budget of about $10 billion, a capital budget. We're in the second to last year of our current 5-year plan of about $22 billion. Our 68,000 employees. Our ridership, we have been an enormous success. I know in the current political swirl that David and I are involved with on one issue that we're a little bit on different sides on. And yes, Carlisle, I know that you didn't immediately respond to that email I sent you a couple of weeks ago, but that's cool. It's okay. And that's congestion pricing and so forth. The ridership of in this current political discussion, occasionally shots are taken at the M.T.A, which is not unusual. It's a large target, and no organization is perfect, none that I've experienced. But overall, I think you can feel very proud with the support of people like David Wepner and his father, Borough President Schulman and Claire. We are working on those Long Island Railroad issues and making them realize that Queens exists, as I think you know from our interaction, and I learned some of that from Claire. There's a perception, I think understandably, that our 2 commuter railroads, Metro North and Long Island Railroad, were not focused as much as they should be on the 5 boroughs, that they were really oriented to Long Island and the Mid-Hudson region. And one of the things that we are trying very hard to do is to have the 5 boroughs, the outer boroughs, because the commuters going to Manhattan, in large part, that they serve and contribute to the growth and viability of Queens, and on the other side, the Bronx. In any event, nonetheless, even though we take our shots, the M.T.A has been an extraordinary success. We would not have the renaissance of New York were it not for the M.T.A. The system is dramatically better. Our capital program, our engineers have accomplished an enormous amount, whether it is our work with the Port Authority in terms of the Jamaica station, just the rebuilding of the lines and so forth, and I think we can all feel very proud of that. So that gives you a flavor, and our ridership, to wit, our ridership has grown by 40% since 1996, and that's just an extraordinary number, and that also is a testament to the success of the institution. In terms of the challenges ahead of the M.T.A, they are dramatic. First and foremost is money. When I came into office last January 07, walked into a fiscal situation with $6 billion of deficits in our operating budget over the next 4 years. What occurred with our capital program, that's for our students, that's the piece that pays for the hard stuff, the rolling stock, the stations, signals. Basically, the legislature and the governor did not put any money into the capital program over the previous 12 years, with some small exceptions, and so the M.T.A had to go out and borrow, had to put it on our Visa and MasterCard. And so as a consequence, our debt service, where you pay off the debt, apologize to the rest of this, giving our little transportation finance class 101 here. But as a consequence, we face dramatic deficits over the next 4 years, basically because of that debt on the capital side, and then on the in terms of not making the same mistake in funding the capital program as was done in the previous 12 years. We are now trying to secure new funding for our next capital program. We have proposed a program of $29 billion. That is about $20 billion to do what we call normal replacement, state of good repair, we give them like 1 or 2 credits for this talk this morning? For our core program, which is basically replacing the subway cars, the buses, the stations as they approach their useful life. Then $5 billion to advance East Side access and 2nd Avenue, which is critical in terms of increasing capacity into Manhattan. We expect about 400,000, we hope and expect there'll be 400 to 500,000 new jobs in Manhattan over the next 20, 25 years, and it's critical that we get people there from Queens, from Long Island, and so those projects are essential from that vantage point and a number of other planning perspectives. And then another $3.5 billion, which is the vision to advance the region for the future. The city of New York is expected to grow by 1 million people over the next 20, 25 years. The region is supposed to grow by 3 million people or so. And I forget the numbers for Queens. I don't know, Claire, if you know them, or David. But in terms of that 1 million people that we expect to increase in New York, a significant number in Queens. And so, I know that's related to some of the zoning, upzoning, and some of the other stuff that's gone on in the borough. And so we proposed a number of projects that are dramatically beneficial to Queens. I know there was a perception by some that the proposals that we had associated with congestion pricing were not oriented toward Queens, but Queens is probably the biggest beneficiary of those projects. And if congestion pricing happens and those projects will go forward, if the congestion pricing goes down, we need to figure out ways to make those happen. And I know I have David's commitment and others and Rory's to find politically viable proposals that will enable us to find, because they are future, they're their future. They are their future. And so what are some of those projects that benefit Queens? It is to put communications-based train control signalization. We have a 1930s signal system on the F train, E train throughout our entire network, except for the L line, where we now have this new technology. We are running, I think, about 26 trains an hour. For those of you who experience going into Manhattan, the crush loads at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, we need to operate more trains per hour. And so we put in 1.4 billion out of that 4.5 billion for that kind of signal system for the Queens Boulevard Hillside Avenue line and for the number 7 line. In addition to that, there's about $150 million for improvements to Jamaica. See, Carlisle, that's if you had responded to the email, that's what I told you some of that stuff. And I know what you came out with. I know ultimately you came out with. But again, in any event, but you should know about this, and you may, and knowing Carlisle, he may already know this, there's $150 million, and again, the point is not congestion pricing, the point is to get this stuff paid for. And so there's $150 million for Jamaica that will allow with East Side access one platform to allow for an upgraded shuttle between Jamaica and Atlantic Avenue, very important to East New York, Nostrand, Atlantic Avenue, those communities in Brooklyn and Queens that can then also feed the reverse commute on the Long Island Railroad out to Nassau and Suffolk County, because as many of you, I'm sure a lot of you live in Long Island, the high price of housing. It's really important that we get folks who live in Queens and Brooklyn out to jobs in Long Island. So there's $150 million in that basket of projects. And then there's some other monies that are beneficial to Queens. So we have the challenge of how we're going to meet this increased population, and we need to implement the capital program to do that. Institutional challenges I'll talk about briefly in a second. But mostly money. How will we pay for that capital program to do these things? And then on the operating side, we are looking at very, very tough times. I had announced that we were proceeding on additional service, which this borough needs very, very much. All the boroughs need very much. Unfortunately, the demise of Bear Stearns occurred right after we had said we were going to go forward. We got the numbers for the month of March in terms of real estate activity in New York, which is a very important revenue source for us, and also got a heads up from the budget folks in Albany, because they also give us money, that they were going in the tank, and so we had to table those, and we're very concerned about what 2009, 2010 look like from a financial perspective. We need to obviously maintain the level of service that we have. We're committed to cutting our budget by about 6%, which is a very robust increase. And so somehow together with our elected officials, we will have to figure out a way how to navigate these waters financially. So that gives you a sense of the challenges. So what's the agenda? So I can just come up here and complain, right? But I get paid students, to come up with an agenda to deal with that. And so here's the agenda that we have. Basically, seven categories. The first category is institutional transformation, kind of aligned with what I was referring to the borough president, and that is the culture of the M.T.A. in many ways had not changed over the last 50, 100 years. The M.T.A. goes back, New York City Transit goes back to the turn of the last century, and so as it relates to how we treat our own employees in terms of honoring them, getting the best out of them, the culture at M.T.A. at New York City Transit in large part was one that was not very progressive and humanistic in getting the best out of people. That doesn't just apply to our frontline employees, also applies to our mid-level managers, our first-line supervision, and even our senior level staff. And so Dick Ravitch, who some of you may recall, was former chairman of the M.T.A., Hezekiah Brown, who some of you may be familiar with, co-chaired a Blue Ribbon panel on workforce development with 61 recommendations that we are now in the process of implementing, fully embraced by our unions, focusing on the issue of culture, of training, labor relations, discipline, succession. It's on our website, so I recommend that if any of you are interested in that you look at our website. If you're interested in the area of human resource development, labor relations, and so forth, a very, very important document that we're moving upon, and some of the professors may assign that to you as an assignment. Not that I'm suggesting one. So that's institutional transformation. I must say that the response that I've gotten from the TWU, the Queens A2, the Amalgamated Transit Union, who operates the buses out in Queens, Long Island Railroad unions, has been phenomenal. One of integrity, respect, could not be better, and we are making significant progress in trying to change the culture to be a more progressive, humanistic, high-performing organization. The second category, and there's a relationship between all three, because culture kind of affects institutions, is institutional transformation. That was what I was referring to in terms of the Long Island Railroad. First, internally, the M.T.A. is probably the best example of a Soviet-styled, pyramid siloed organization. Our vision is to make it leaner, flatter, more integrated. There's a lot of value to be had by having these 7 agencies work together in a collaborative way. You need to do that post 9/11 when we have emergencies, because there is redundancy. If you have a strike, if you have an emergency between the railroads, as you all know, the Long Island Railroad main line is really close to the Queens Boulevard Hillside Avenue line. And so you have that kind of system redundancy. In the 21st century, it's all about people, and we want to provide the best careers to people. And what we want to do to attract, the high-performing students is to say to them, you can start off as, a conductor at New York City Transit, then become a deputy superintendent at Metro North, then go to work at headquarters at 347, then be a general manager in buses, and rise to the top. We believe that the M.T.A. can provide the best careers possible, and that's part of what we need to do to be competitive. From a financial standpoint, there are significant monies that can be saved by doing this, and so that's why we are doing it. Some of the key things that we are doing to realize this vision, and they are dramatic and they are transformative. Some of them you may have read about. They've been on the front page of the New York Times. One of them is to create general managers at New York City Transit subways. Right now, there's only one person who's really accountable for the subway lines in subways that has subways. On the L line and on the 7 line, we've created the position of a general manager who has the rapid transit operations reporting to him on that line, the stations department on that line, car equipment on that line. That person is now the internal customer for our engineering department, our operations planning department that does the planning and schedules. That kind of accountability, that kind of communication never existed. In addition to that, that will enable us to reduce the layers of management. There are now 6 layers of management between the conductor or the station agent and the senior vice president for subways. and we'll be able to significantly reduce that by doing it. But it's not even about saving money. It is about creating a more responsive, high-performing organization. We're about to integrate our 3 bus companies into one. I run New York City Transit Bus, which is the largest, which has about 22 bus depots. M.T.A. Bus, which M.T.A. took over from the city, has done a phenomenal job, as I think some of you may know over the last couple of years. Very proud of that. And then the third one is Long Island Bus. It is insane in 2001 to be having 7 front offices for these 7 organizations, 7 back offices. In the case of buses, 3 technical support departments, 3 chief maintenance officers, and so very, very shortly we're going to be going forward where we have one organization doing that from a management perspective. That will be happening very, very shortly. And also we are implementing M.T.A. Business Services to create one back office, not 7. We believe we can save $30 to $40 million a year by having such functions as accounting, payroll, a variety of other support functions run by one M.T.A. Business Services rather than New York City Transit having theirs, Long Island Railroad having theirs, Metro North having theirs, and so forth. And we're doing a bunch of other things, but these things taken together will create a leaner, more integrated, flatter, more responsive M.T.A. That's the internal side of institutional transformation. On the external side, working incredibly hard with external stakeholders such as the business improvement districts, such as the community boards, such as individual citizens, so that we are much more partner-like and responsive to their agendas. I could speak in greater detail about that. Then third, customer service. We are trying to dramatically improve customer service. We're doing some things that also are revolutionary in the context of the M.T.A. We're advancing text messaging. We have an RPA on the street. You will be having text messaging, being able to have that service. Cell phones, the use of cell phones. For those of you who take the Long Island Railroad from Penn Station, you will notice the new electronic signage that we have in Penn that gives much better information. Again, talking the interplay between institutional transformation and customer service. We should not have 7 different phone lines for customer service for lost and found, having one, and so forth. So very strong agenda, and we have maybe 35, 40 items that we're moving upon that will improve customer service to the people that we serve. Fourth, projects and planning. The M.T.A. did not have a broad, longer-term vision about where it needed to go. And it was clear to me from my work at NYU, running the Route and Transportation Center, that's one of the reasons why I founded it, was because there was an absence of discussion of the long-term vision. Working closely with Buzz Paswell, my colleague from the University Transportation Research Center, who completely saw it the same way. Buzz's orientation had been more on the engineering side, and there was a little bit of a void on the policy side. So working closely with CUNY, with Buzz, and again, also the Aviation Institute as well, there's a lot of programs there. Important to have a longer-term vision. New York will have dips and valleys, as so many of you know. We're going to go into a hard time now over the next year, 2 years. But the story of New York, as so many of the people who are older than the students know, we come up. We had this in the 1970s, we had this after 2001, and we will come back again. Part of the challenge, to me, probably the greatest challenge, is trying to take the M.T.A. through this for the next couple of years so we don't hurt our ability to go even stronger in the future. So we laid out at the State of the M.T.A. speech, the first one ever done, March 3rd, a longer-term vision in terms of how we're going to accommodate 1 million more people in the city and so forth. I mentioned some of the things that relate to Jamaica before. If you're interested in that kind of conversation, go to our website and take a look at that presentation, because it'll give you a sense of what we're doing, but very proud that we put out the outlines of how the M.T.A., if given the appropriate funding, political support, can meet the challenge of the demand that we see in terms of people. And then executing these projects, moving them forward. Moving forward, East Side Access, which will allow Long Island Railroad customers from Nassau and Suffolk and Queens to go into Grand Central Terminal by 2014. Advancing 2nd Avenue subway, which is important to our core. Advancing the 3rd track project on Long Island, because we only have 2 tracks on Long Island Railroad, and is crucial for that reverse commuting I was making reference to before, and to have the capacity to feed in from Long Island into Manhattan for those jobs I was talking about in the next 20 years. The third track project, very tricky in terms of politics, of Floral Park and Mineola and places like that. But Helena Williams, our terrific president of Long Island Road, I'm slightly biased, I appointed her. But she's got great reviews. Happy that Newsday called it a masterstroke when Helena was appointed, and she's lived up to that expectation. Helena is working very hard to try and make the third track project happen there. And so that's the fourth priority. Fifth is the money. I talked about that. The M.T.A. does not print money, and we are dependent on City Hall. We are dependent on Albany. We're dependent upon Washington. We have kept our expenses at about 3%, the rate of inflation, with the exception of security. So we have prudent, but again, we're carrying 40% more people than we've had. The sixth priority is safety and security. Unfortunately, we've been a target of Al-Qaeda and others, and so we have had to really ramp it up in terms of hardening our facilities, surveillance equipment, other detection systems and stuff like that. And very pleased that the State Controller DiNapoli, has acknowledged the significant progress we've made over the last year and a half or so in terms of moving that up. And also we've significantly increased our deployment by M.T.A. police. On the trains, when I came in, I found that they were really more in the cars in Grand Central and Penn Station. That's good, but you really want to be out there and have a very strong visible deployment. So we went from having maybe 50 train patrols a week to now over 1,000. Just mostly by redeployment, about $3 million additionally to fund that. And then seventh, sustainability, global warming, is clearly, with terrorism, the greatest challenges of our generations to be. And so in the next week to two, we'll be announcing the results of the Blue Ribbon Panel on Sustainability. I have some really exciting recommendations that we will be implementing to reduce our carbon footprint. And things that we can do that will truly lead to a more sustainable New York. But I'm not going to scoop myself. Pay attention over the next week to 2 weeks as Aaron Donovan, our Deputy Press Secretary, and others put that work together. So that gives you a sense of what we are, what our challenges are, the agenda that we put forward. And, it's a great honor to have this job. It's a spectacular job. Proud to be now working for Governor Patterson. But it's like mornings like these when I get to see my whole life in front of me and to do this and to represent this fabulous organization, this extraordinary institution, slightly underloved, but that's okay, and to do this. So thank you, and happy to take Q&A.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sander. And I know we have some questions, and yes, we're going to love you more. Right, Carlisle, as soon as we get that East Side link.
Talk to David.
Okay, and we will, we certainly will. We have a tradition of starting with our students.
Please.
And the Vice Chair of the Senate. So my question is, for the question I just said, is thing. When you look at the M.T.A. map of subway, by the person's Jamaica Station, you don't see the Yale College on there, the last stop of E, J, and Z train. Whereas when you look at the other, when you look at the subway, other colleges on the map. So my question to you is, how can we put your college on the map?
The way you do that first is asking the executive director and the chief executive officer. So we will take a look at that and see what our criteria is. It's a real good question, and we'll get you hopefully a reasonable answer. And we'll look at that as a real possibility. So Aaron or Devon, I introduced Aaron and also Devon Rogers, my general superintendent from buses on loan to me this year. Where's Devon? Where are you, Devon? Where are you? There you are. Okay, so between the two of you. We can go back to Chris Boyland, but happy to look at that.
Okay, the second question is also a student. Is that you, Mr. Khan?
Yes.
Yes, good. And then the next will be Mr. Phillips, and the next will be Reverend Norris.
Hi, I'm Luke. My question to you is, how do you plan to change the organization of M.T.A. to fully recognize the potential of the M.T.A. workforce?
Well, as I said earlier, your assignment now is And I'm also an adjunct professor at NYU. I've not stopped teaching, so I also say it in that spirit, Luke. But your assignment is to go to our website and read the Workforce Development Report. My email is esander@mtahq.org, and I'm looking forward to an email from you in the next week or two about what you think of it. Okay, Luke? Again, they'll give you the email address if you weren't able to copy that down. Or Carlisle can give it to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Sander. I have an important question. What is the M.T.A.'s position on the mayor's proposal to implement a toll at 60th Street and below? I know it's going to have a major impact on the M.T.A. system, which is already seriously stressed.
Yeah. Our position is on that. Primarily from the M.T.A. perspective, we have been supportive of congestion pricing institutionally because we are, I would say, desperate for the funding that it would create. I also personally think it's good translation policy. I realize there's strong divisions of opinion within the Queens community about it. And I live in Queens. I live in Douglaston. My good friend David Wepper and I are on different sides of that issue. But in terms of where the M.T.A.'s position is, we are supportive of congestion pricing because we are desperate for the $4.5 billion of funding to support that $30 billion. In terms of how we will deal with that, in the proposal that we have put forward for congestion pricing, we're at slight variance with the city. We need about $105 million, which we will find, to provide the operating support for 300 plus buses, express buses, additional buses. We also be putting on additional subway service on lines where we can do that. So we believe that in terms of the issue of displacing drivers who will be coming onto our system, we feel that we can accommodate that. The broader issue of overcrowding the system goes well beyond these numbers. We estimate it's about 70,000 folks who would come onto our system. When you look at it over the 26 subway lines that we have, when you look at it over a peak from 6 a.m. in the morning to the evening, in terms of the actual numbers, that's less of a factor in terms of overcrowding than the general population growth that we're really concerned about. So that is our view. I'm certainly familiar with the issues that have been raised by Councilman Weprin, others in terms of issues of equity, policy, and what have you, but that is the M.T.A.'s position, as I say. And so I think we can handle it technically. It's worked in London. I think it will work here. I think technically it will work from that vantage point. But again, I say, if it doesn't happen, we will need the strong support from folks like David, from Assemblywoman Cook, Assemblywoman Clark, folks from this community, to advance the projects I mentioned, specifically for here. And they tie in directly to airport access. They tie into making sure we get all those folks to Jamaica to support, all the work that Greater Jamaica has been doing and is programmed to do. So much of what we do, what M.T.A. does, is critical to the future of this area.
Thank you.
Over north.
Yeah, Mr. Sander, now working for Governor Patterson, sort of sorry you didn't get a chance to hear some of the things that we had asked former governor to help us with.
Mm-hmm.
One of the tenets that we asked him to consider was the reopening of Union Hall Street, the railroad station at Union Hall Street, so that this college would have, maybe there would be greater access from the island and from the city to get here. My question to you is there anything that you can do to see that that stop at Union Hall Street is reopened?
Well, in a theoretical sense, there's probably a lot I could do. The question is, whether from a translation policy perspective, whether it is the best thing in the broader thing. I'm familiar with that station, as I made reference before. I spent 4 years right next to it in the Gertz building, running the Office of Rent Administration, and so familiar little bit at a distance with that issue. I will go back to Helena and ask her. I certainly understand the benefits, so I certainly understand the request, and I can see how it would be really terrific. The opposite side of the coin is what impact it would have on the rest of the system, and I'll ask the question because ideally I'd love to see it because I mean I know the proximity. It's like right over there. For those events that your college was so gracious enough to allow the Office of Administration to have here, I will walk through there. So we will take a look at it, and I will discuss it with Helena, and so Devon or Aaron, put that down on the list.
Good morning. I am in workforce development, and my question is, what are the plans or provisions to include our young people in internships and job placement at the M.T.A. We have a growing number of people who are going to be retiring from your system. And so how do you plan on replacing them if we're not going to train our young people now?
Well, I would also, again, recommend, the assigned reading I gave to Luke, the Blue Ribbon panel.
I'm a professor already. I need this.
I know that. That's why I didn't say it, Professor. Professor, that's why I did not say that. But if you want to, but if you're teaching any courses relevant, feel free to assign it as assignment to your class, because I think it actually is, a very significant document. And so that whole document is about the workforce development. Yes, you are right. One of the biggest challenges is retirement. We're losing a lot of people. That's why we want to be competitive in the market. We need you. We need this college. We need the whole CUNY system, the university system, for our future. And so I can't speak specifically in terms of specific programs. I apologize for that. If you give me your card, I'll be happy to have Myrna Ramon, my chief of staff, who has this whole area, who championed that document, to be specific about what we recommend. I know when we did the State of the M.T.A. speech, we had a job fair right at the location. I'm sorry it was a Cooper Union, but that was like a good place to have that speech there. Maybe if we do it next year, we'll do it at CUNY facility. But at the work for at Cooper Union, we had a whole job bank, and no. My job, I think, is to make the organization competitive and attractive to your students. It's actually the other way around, and that's what we're trying to do, and that's what I'm trying to drive home at my level to our presidents and the work that we're doing.
Okay, maybe one question from our Bronx Aerospace student.
Good morning, sir. My question is, with the pay hikes that you have set to take action and that are already taking action, how is it going to affect students who rely on Metro cards to get them to and from school and on trips and everything?
Yeah, it is very, very tough. What we've tried to do is keep the fare and toll increases below the level of inflation. As I said, I grew up, Wexford Terrace in an apartment building. My parents did not have a lot of money. They were basically refugees. My dad came over from Germany before the war. He was on the ground while these guys were flying over. He was on the beaches. And so, came from, after my parents fled Europe, from what I would describe as lower middle income or middle income. And so I certainly can, appreciate as a student, I was kind of a similar situation, to you when I was growing up in terms of that. What I'm going to try and do is get as much support financially from Albany, from Washington, from City Hall. I will work as hard as I can to reduce our expenses. The 6% budget reduction that I am on tap for is as aggressive as any state agency or city agency, particularly given the other demands that we have. I cannot say that we won't have fare and toll increases in the future. The level of those increases will depend on what our elected officials in the city council, in the assembly, in the state senate, and the governor give us. If you have any other suggestions, you got the email address.
Okay, I think there is just one. Oh, this gentleman, is that it? Okay, maybe, let's see, let's sort of get a little lineup, and maybe we'll take, 2-3 more questions? How are you for time? Tell me.
I'm past time, but because it's your
past time.
college, we'll do one or two.
So we'll take 3. How's that? So it's this gentleman, it's that, no, well, he says because it's your college, right? and this. So that will be it, and then we'll wrap it up. We want to respect our speaker's time.
Yeah, actually, two questions.
One.
Most, well, I'll blend them together somehow. Most cities, major cities, and not so major cities have rapid transit from the airports to the central business district. I was wondering, I know there was a plan to have connection to LaGuardia. I believe it was discontinued when it was referred somewhere else. I was wondering if that's on the radar screen for that.
I would,
And the other question has to do with busing. The buses,
So how are you going to blend that with?
I'll figure it out. I've noticed after hours, you have these large buses with like a handful of people in them, and I was wondering, I realize energy is expensive, also on the trains. The trains are virtually, there could be like 5 or 6 cars in a train, and a handful of people in each car. Why don't they consolidate that, put shorter trains, or use
Okay,
smaller
got it,
vehicles?
got it.
Thank you.
You didn't do such good at blending, but that's all right. Okay. In terms of access to the airports, again, I recommend that you go to our website and look at the State of the M.T.A. speech that I gave because I spoke to the issue of LaGuardia there longer term. You know, one of the things that we need to do through these ups and downs, because the M.T.A. does ultimately deliver on these projects, and that's why I was upset, again, in the political realm that people said the M.T.A. does nothing. Look at the system 20 years ago. And so you have to look at it, though, in a little longer time frame. In the longer time, you know, immediately we need to do 2nd Avenue, East Side access, 3rd track. In the longer term, I do think there needs to be a connection to LaGuardia. We have the air train here. I think it's been, you know, fabulously beneficial to this community. I'm not sure, in fact, I'm not sure Carlisle would be excited about, you know, direct connections that would not include Jamaica. But in terms of LaGuardia, you know, I think in the longer term, there should be the RPA, other advocates and planning organizations have talked about variations. The N train was the proposal then. That ran into political difficulty because of the issues in Astoria. Basically, for a 2-block space, it went down. I forget, was it 31st Street or what was it? Yeah, basically because there was apartment buildings for, you know, political, you know, opposition. That project not go forward. Had that not been the case, it probably would have gone forward. There was funding there with the PFC, which are York College aviation students can tell you, the passenger facility charge. There was funding. So the funding that the state put up has been reallocated, but I believe strongly when you look at a 2030 frame in terms of what New York needs, I believe there should be another connection. So there are other proposals for that. In terms of equipment, we have looked in the past in terms of having smaller buses during the off hours. There's a real issue of whether from a cost-benefit standpoint that works because of the short period of time. There's also issues of coupling, decoupling trains, again, during the off hours, and again, given how long our lines are from when they begin and originate. If you want more of an answer on that, send me an email, I'll get that to you.
Okay, I do believe, because he's been so gracious, that we're going to end the questions there, because there have been quite a few, and one of our traditions is to allow folk to come in and then to get on with their day. And we know you have a busy day, and so we want to thank you so much, and we do want to present you with a few gifts from York. So another round of applause, please. And our students have some gifts for you. You will probably recognize that as a Texan Navy training aircraft.
Oh, this is fabulous.
And now your own York College sweatshirt.
That is fabulous.
And I hear you're an adjunct at NYU. We may have to adjunct you here too in your spare time. So again, thank you so much. So ladies and gentlemen, our breakfast is over. Do take a look at your packages. Do also participate if you can in our Sunday event. Thank you so much for all of your support. Oh, that's a side face.
Yes. Is this for you?
Yeah, it's for me.